What's going on, everybody? Noah from Stage 3 Motorsports here, and today I wanted to bring you a quick review of this Bestop Trektop that we have on our Bronco. So at this point, we've been running the top for about 7 months, and I've had quite a bit of time in the seat, both running off-road and on-road miles, and I've used this top in just about every configuration you can manage with it. So I figured this was as good a time as any to kind of run through some of the pros and cons, or the things that I found that I really like and dislike about it. Before we get into that, I will point out that we do have an install video on this top that's worth taking a look at if you haven't already watched it, and I will link that up in the corner above. We'll talk a little more on the install later in the review, but I just wanted to point that out in case you guys had missed that video. So the first section I really want to dial into is talking about the overall styling and the look and design of the top, because I think that's really what catches people's eye and kind of attracts them to the Trektop. So right off the bat, there's two different materials you can pick for this top. There's the twill or vinyl option. We went with the twill, which has more of this matte finish to it, and I think it's probably the better material of the two. I prefer the look of it, and it's proven to be quite durable as well. We haven't had any issues with it tearing or, catching with, tree branches and bushes rubbing across it. It doesn't seem to really stain or lock in mud or anything when it gets dirty. It's pretty easy to wash out, and there's not any leakage or like water that seeps through from what I found. So overall, I'm really happy with the material that they used. But that's the first thing that kind of affects styling. The other thing that obviously is noticeable right off the bat is that this is designed as a slant-back top instead of a squared-off back. And I kind of prefer the squared off look on the Bronco that the factory soft top has, just because it's such a boxy vehicle overall. But I don't think the slant back looks bad, and I know a lot of people really prefer the slant back look. It's also been really popular on Jeeps. So Bestop did a good job of making a slant back style top that fits the Bronco's styling and almost looks like it could be a factory part. Another big change you'll notice with the Trektop is those side windows. Obviously they're cut to match the slant back, but they also fix an issue that the factory soft top had, which is that wavy bacon texture where those plastic windows just wouldn't pull straight and seemed like they were never tight. That's probably one of the biggest gripes that I've seen online and that I personally had with the factory soft top. These windows pull much tighter, they're nice and smooth, there's no wrinkles or waves, and even after 7 months of running them on the truck, they haven't really loosened up or got wrinkly and weird looking. It definitely seems like they look a bit more how the factory top should have looked. So I do really like that. And then the back window across the rear also pulls nice and tight, and we haven't had any issues with that getting wrinkly either. So overall, I think that kind of elevates the styling and is much sharper. So overall, I think the Trektop has really good presentation, and certainly if you like the slant back styling, it's hard to beat. It definitely fits the Bronco well, and I was pretty pleased with how it looked on ours, especially now that we've built this truck up quite a bit and we've got it sitting on 37s and we've got lights and a lot of other mods on it. The top kind of just helps set it further apart from the crowd and makes it stick out a little, which I really like. The next thing I want to talk about is the functionality of this top, because it does function quite a bit differently from the factory soft top. So essentially, the roof section of this top opens up in a similar fashion where you can unlatch these two front clamps and fold it back, and it basically kind of settles down in sort of an accordion fashion right behind the rear passengers and creates just a giant sunroof, which the factory soft top does a similar feature where you can just fold that first section back. But what I like is that this one does actually sit a bit further behind the rear passengers' heads. So if you're in the back, the top isn't touching the back of your head or isn't right on top of you. It sits a little further behind you to where everybody gets a nice big panoramic view, and I personally think it's a little less annoying that way, especially if you're a taller passenger. The other way that the Trektop really varies from the factory soft top is that once you have it in that folded back position behind the passengers' heads, that's about as far as it goes. There's not a way to fold the roof section any further back or to really remove it. It just kind of sits as a bundle on top of the roll bar section of the truck. And I can't say that I really love that. I understand that the design is that way because of how the slant back is shaped and the way that they've attached the windows. So it's sort of a give or take. You have to decide if you prefer the slant back look and the nicer side windows, or if you prefer the ability to fully fold it. But honestly, for me, I really appreciated how the factory soft top could be settled all the way into that rear cargo area and, kind of folded up along the tailgate. So Personally, I don't really love that this only folds back that first section, but it's not a deal breaker so long as you don't mind the way that it looks or you're fine with making that sacrifice. Now, the other thing to point out is that even though it only folds back that far in the roof section, you obviously still can remove the rear side windows and that rear panel window as well. So what I found is that probably the best looking configuration is having the roof section of the top all the way forward and latched into place, but taking all of the back windows out and then removing the doors so you have a full kind of safari look to the truck. And in that configuration, it is really, really appealing. It follows the line so nicely, and with the way that the top kind of tapers off where that, you know, back slanted window would have been, it just looks super clean once the truck is stripped down. So I found that being kind of my favorite configuration, especially out here in the desert, where as nice as it is to have an open top or get the full open air feel, shade can be a little bit more important. And so having the doors open but still having shade up above was great. And like I said, I really preferred that visually, and I think it looks better in that Safari configuration than the factory soft top did. And the other thing I want to point out is that I was a little concerned when we first put this top together that getting those side windows and the back windows out was going to be too difficult and not worth the hassle. But really, after they've been on for a day or two when you first install the top, they stretch enough that it's much easier to slide them in and out, and the way that they attach is fairly intuitive. So I found that pulling them off and putting them back on, or even just setting them in the back of the truck, is no hassle at all. It's actually pretty simple to do. So when you're off-road, if you do want to swap them out and just set them in the back or leave them in another vehicle or whatever, it's not a hassle and you can knock it out in a couple minutes easy. Another small thing that's worth mentioning, I suppose, in terms of functionality of the top, is that the Trektop does have these little zipper pouches with kind of a mesh pocket at the top for both the driver and passenger. I really like that as a nice addition to this to give you an additional storage area, but I will say, be warned if you live in a warm climate like we do here in Arizona, because since this top is still just twill fabric and it's all black, as soon as it's decently warm or hot out, anything you put in there just completely cooks. And so I found that there's not a lot of things that I'd want to squeeze in there that wouldn't be affected by the heat in some way. So I think that might be a little bit more useful if you live in a colder climate, but I still appreciate that they put them in, because for a lot of people, they probably will be able to use that to hold their wallet or tuck their phone into or whatever. And it gives you kind of a safe zipped up area where that stuff can sit that's high and dry above the rest of the cab. The next thing I want to talk about is the overall noise and the in-cab experience of daily driving with this Trektop. Because one of the things that they aimed to improve when Bestop designed this was the wind buffeting issue that the factory soft top had, where the sections that kind of come down towards the window on the sides of the vehicle were pretty loose on the factory soft top. So as soon as there was a strong crosswind, it would catch and could cause the whole thing to flat pretty violently right over your head, which is super annoying and kind of an oversight on Ford's part. Now, this top does fix that issue. It pulls a lot more tightly along that top frame above the windows, and we didn't have any issues with any crosswind buffeting or anything like that with this, especially with the longer road trip time that we spent, because we did run this from Arizona all the way up to Ouray, Colorado. So there was a good 7 hours or so of time on the freeway, and I was pretty pleased that that wasn't an issue. But what I will say is that the top wasn't quite as quiet as I hoped. And I know that people like to get in and comment like, well, you shouldn't have got a soft top then. Soft tops are loud. And I totally understand that. It's the nature of the beast. No matter what, if you've got a soft top, you kind of have to anticipate that it's not going to be a quiet and comfortable in-cab experience, because you're sacrificing it for the simplicity of being able to remove it and fold it back. So I totally understand. But in an effort to be fair and kind of discuss the differences, I did find that in a lot of cases, it seemed like the factory soft top was maybe a bit quieter or about the same, and there wasn't really a huge improvement in sound deadening or, you know, reducing that wind noise. So this top is still a little bit rowdy when you get up to speed. I would say in terms of driving around town, where you're only going up to about 50 miles an hour, both tops are going to be about the same, and you'll be pleased that you don't have the wind buffeting issue. And, you know, it's a pretty regular in-cab experience. Really, once you get on the freeway and you're getting up to 75 miles an hour or so is when you notice a lot more of the vibrations and just some of the general wind noise moving over the truck. I will leave that up to some of you guys to debate who have maybe driven with both of these tops, and, you know, can explain in the comments what you think was better. But just know that this isn't going to be significantly quieter, or, you know, it's going to sound like a hard top. If you really want a quiet, comfortable in-cab experience, you either got the wrong vehicle or should have got a hard top from factory in most cases. So I figured that was worth pointing out. The last thing I wanted to talk about in this review is the installation process, which, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you haven't watched that video where we installed it on this truck, I highly recommend it because it is a very involved install in terms of time. It really doesn't require a lot of crazy tools. You can do it all with simple hand tools, and it can be done in your garage or in your driveway, but there's a lot of linkages and seals and little brackets and things that need to get put on in order for this top to be pieced together, and they don't really pre-assemble anything for you. It comes in just pieces. So definitely plan on having a full day of work put in to get this top assembled and on the vehicle. I know that in Bestop's instructions, they quote it as being about an hour and a half job or something like that, but it will easily run you up to 5 hours in most cases, if not maybe a bit longer, depending on how comfortable you are with it. So just keep all of that in mind. I do think it would be nice if Bestop pre-assembled some sections of the top, or, you know, helped you out with some of the linkages to make things a bit more quick and seamless. But another problem with the way that it installs is that once it's on, it's semi-permanent. And I mean that in the regard of you can't just simply remove the whole roof section if you don't want it sitting on the back of the roll bar. It's a little bit more involved to unscrew it, whereas with the factory soft top, once you fold it all the way back, it's basically 3 nuts that hold it on to get it removed and completely off the vehicle. So it may not be a deal breaker for some people, but once again, it really depends on how you use the truck. I don't think there's much else I can say about the Trektop, so to kind of wrap up the review and just simplify everything as much as possible, if you're somebody who really likes the slant-back styling and you want the cleaner, tighter look that the Trektop provides for a soft top on the Bronco, then I think for the most part you'll really enjoy it, and the functionality may not be a huge issue. But if you're a lot more invested in being able to fold the top all the way back or simply remove the top from the vehicle entirely, then the factory soft top may actually still be the better option for you. So it does really come down to who you are and the way that you use your Bronco. So I'll let you guys decide for yourselves, but hopefully this video was helpful in kind of making some of those decisions before putting the money down on the top. And as always, I'll have some links down below in the description that are going to shoot you over to our website. So if you want to take a look at some of the details or get a quick peek at the vinyl version of this top, that'll all be down there. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.